So this is Ladies Trek Library. I'm Kavura and I'm here with Jen, and we are going to do our little homage to Peter David. He's a very well-known Star Trek novelist, and he just passed away. Jen, hi.
Hey, Kavora, and hey, listeners. I am happy to be back talking about Star Trek books, but was sad to hear today that Peter David had passed away last night. I knew he had been sick from his Facebook posts and those of his wife. That sad to hear that he passed away. Uh, Peter David, I did not look this up, and I should have, but I am willing to bet that Peter David has probably written more Star Trek books than any other author. Do you think so?
I would venture to say he probably has, because with that new Frontier series, he wrote so many with that. I mean, and that's mostly what puts him over the top, I think. But yeah, even before that, he wrote a lot of Star Trek.
Yeah, and of course other genres as well, but probably one of the most, if not the most prolific Star Trek writer. And I know we both have had the opportunity to meet Peter and attend some of his panels at Dragon Con, and I think you saw him at several other cons. His panels were always funny. He's got that sense of humor. He was at Dragon Con like every year for forever, it seemed. That was one thing you could count on, was Peter David was going to be at Dragon Con. So the first Dragon Con that I went to, I made it a point to see one or two of his panels, and I haven't been to Dragon Con in a while, but every year that I went, I would see Peter David. And
Yeah, he was a staple there. I mean,
yeah,
yeah. And I remember seeing him even at a few other cons, but he was at my first Atlanta con. And I remember he was very funny and very friendly. He's always funny with the audience. And he also, like after all the programming was over at night, he would hang around the con and talk to people. And he was the first con guest that I saw that actually hung around and spoke to the fans. And he just sat down and everybody gathered around and talked to him. He was a really nice guy. And so we were going to mention like some of his books, and he has just written so many Star Trek books. But I probably what I one the one I really think I enjoyed the most was Vendetta. Even though, I mean, I like Mzadi, I like his Q books, Q and Law. But I just remember Vendetta at the time. It was just really groundbreaking. It was an epic novel about the Borg, and it had this other character, a female character that was obsessed with the Borg, and I thought she was just a fascinating character. And even hearing Peter David talk about it before it was released, and he told us some of the problems we had with it, but he had to write it really fast, and there were some flaws, but he came together, fixed everything, and it just turned out to be really great. And it was the first time in Star Trek that a ship had gone at warp 10, and you find out what that is like. So it was a really cool book. What was your favorite book of his?
well, I'm going to mention one that's probably not on anyone's list of their favorite Peter David book, and probably a lot of people haven't read it. But so I've only read about six of his books looking back. And that's just because there are so many Star Trek books, and so many to read. And I eventually definitely plan to read more. But the first Peter David book that I read, was actually a next generation book called A Rock in a Hard Place. And I read this book because it was one of a few Star Trek books that I picked up at a thrift store years ago. And I had all these Star Trek books, but the vast majority of them were original series. And up until that point, I had pretty much only read original series books. That's just what the books that I had. And I saw that Peter David was going to be at Dragon Con the first year that I decided to go. I overcame my dislike of immense crowds and finally decided to go to Dragon Con. So I thought, well, I hadn't read a Peter David book at that point, and I happened to have this book, A Rock in a Hard Place. So it was the first Next Generation book that I read, and like I said, until that point, I had only read original series books. And the original series books that I had read, the vast majority of them were from the 70s and the early 80s. And those, as you know, Star Trek readers know, can be hit or miss. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good. So I didn't really know what to expect about, Peter David's work or about a Next Generation novel. Were these going to be like the original series where some of them are just not that great? And it's not, like I said, the most popular Star Trek book. A lot of people probably haven't read it. It's just one of the numbered series. But immediately started reading it, and it's number 10 of on the Next Generation numbered books. Um, and it's a little different because the main characters are Riker, but also an original character named Quentin Stone. Um, And but as I started reading it right away, I got the feeling that, Peter David really knows the characters in Next Generation. He really knows Riker and Troy and some of the other characters. Some of the earlier Star Trek novels were written by people who, even if they were good writers, they didn't really know Star Trek or the characters, and you can tell. But I could tell right away this is someone who knows these characters, and I just thought, wow, he did a great job building the character of Riker and the whole storyline, even if it wasn't like the most exciting story or memorable one. And just reading that was like, wow, I really like how he knows the characters and how he writes them, and that made me want to read more of his books. Um, so that's what I would consider like my most memorable Peter David book that I've read. I mean, I've read some of the more popular ones. I read Vendetta, like you mentioned, Imzadi. Um, I think, and we covered on Ladies Trek Library, we covered The Rift. And there's a
Yes, we
few
did.
others that I read, and I can't remember if we talked about them in this podcast or I just read them. But like The Captain's Daughter, that's a popular one that I read. And I think the other one was The Disinherited, which he co-authored with Michael Jan Friedman and Robert Greenberger. Um, but yeah, A Rock and a Hard Place. If you haven't read it and you like Riker, I think it's a good book to read.
I do remember that one. Yeah, yeah. And because it was still early in the Next Generation years. But yeah,
Yeah,
he has written a lot. I was just looking now on Memory Alpha. Oh, it
48,
was
I think, is what I the last. And this is from a couple years ago, so that might even be outdated. So I think he has written more than anyone else.
27 for New Frontier, plus, some of the Starfleet Academy books. And he did write, I know he said he started writing for comics, the Star Trek comics, before he started doing Star Trek novels. And he started writing the Next Generation novels before he wrote any of the original series novels, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that until just now.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like he went backwards, but but yeah. And before Dishonor, which was one of the milestone books of the like one of the post Nemesis books.
Oh yeah, I read that, and I
Yeah,
totally forgot about it. I read that.
yeah. I mean, because he's written so much.
Yeah.
So so that is what we wanted to say. He is just really an excellent writer, and like you said, he has a great grasp of the characters. He was a real Star Trek fan, and we will miss him.
Yes, we will.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.